Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to another video. Let's call it that. It's a little bit of a hodgepodge of everything today. We're covering a bunch of stuff on a wonderful Friday afternoon, and we're going to be talking about not only some UFC best bets, but also some PFLBellator and any other questions you guys may have. No idea how long this live stream is going to take. It could be a quick one. It could be one where there's no questions, we get out of here early, or one where we talk fights and we have a good time. I'm happy to answer any questions people may have. But going forward, little itinerary. I'm going to cover over best bets video. I got a few of them to cover. Shouldn't take more than 5-10 minutes. Then I'm going to do a quick dive of that PFLBellator card while answering questions throughout the way. I should have that timestamp down below for those watching this after the fact. But what we're going to do is, as always, usually on Fridays, by now, I do have my best bets video live. Typically, it's going to be 4 or 5 prop bets, money line bets, stuff like that, all brought to you by the great people over there at CoolBet. And it's going to be in the card we have here. And I was going to edit a video for it. Let's just do it live. Why not? I got a little slideshow for you guys. It's going to look all cute, all pretty here for you. A little slideshow. Come on. Like, this is bonus points right here. No, I have to think so. But either way, coming to you with our very first fight of the night, very first bet of the night. Actually, we're going with the under 2.5 rounds in the Christian Quinones versus Raoni Barcelos fight, -154. One where, yeah, we're playing a little bit of juice here. It's one that has a bunch of different connotations to it, right? We have to acknowledge that, first of all, this fight card is at elevation. There are other things to grasp behind this right here, being that it is one that is going to have 7,500 feet in the air. Cardio may come into question, but a fight between two fighters with polarizing styles, right? Christian Quinones is that hometown guy. He has a ton of power in his hands, good striking, but he's limited to that. And I think in this matchup here, Barcelos can have the better level of competition, better volume, better ground game, better grappling, and a guy who has multiple paths to get it done. The concerns with Barcelos is that cardio and that durability, being an older age. And I do think Quinones is the guy to go out there and have his path to victory realized through striking success. I do think it's either Barcelos goes out there, grapples, has path to victory on the mat, or Quinones has that knockout power, one-shot opportunity. Who knows? Either way, it is a fun matchup, one that is, I think, in my eyes, prime to go under here. I do think Barcelos over there able to get an early sub, but Quinones' power is live. Either way, this covers both of our bases. Now, a lot of talking early on. Usually I edit out these videos, you know what? And if you want to see a decent camera, yeah, check out my other videos. I got a full edited one there, the nice one here. This one is a nice little doing its job here for the live streams. But anyways, next up we have ourselves another under. Honestly, exact same price tag. This time in the very, very first fight of the night, we're going with the under 2.5 rounds in the Eric Silva versus the Muhammad Naimov fight. One where we have Naimov being a -550, -600 favorite, a very large favorite here, but one that I don't want to make comments too much about the money line, but one where I do think it's an interesting fight. Eric Silva looked like a decent guy with finishing upside on the regional scene, a guy who had the ability to go out there, have a good karate base, but also some decent top control and ground game. But truth be told, he's limited to that. He's limited to that one and done shot on the feet. And he has seemed to be more submission over position on the mat, allowing him to be reversed, allowing him to be put on his back. And you add in his karate style on the feet, the guy can be hit very often here. And although I think the guy has a finishing upside, he's very explosive. The way he has his hands down low, the way we saw him follow the top position, the way we saw him fade against TJ Brown is not really good looking against guy Naimov, who, although I think Naimov has his flaws, will walk forward, will throw the fight ending intent, and has beaten a much better level of competition. I do think Naimov's really good at finish, but Silva's a guy who rates out as early finish or bust, in my opinion. So if that's the case, we cover both our base here with an under. More so inclined towards a Naimov inside the distance bet here, but we're getting a -650 favorite here to finish the fight at -154, and one where I do think Silva has some finishing upside as well, being his path to victory. Either way, I'm taking the under and a similar price tag to the one we had going on early. So there's 2 props, 2 unders. We know we like violence, and that kind of correlates with the whole, let's say, distance type of thing. You know, we see the elevation be a big concern for not only me breaking on this fight, but many people talking about it. If Silva was able to slow down a bit against TJ Brown and be clubbing some of that third round, I think Naimov can continue to go forward here. So another bet I'm liking. Let's shout out some people here. MB going in. He's getting the Iron Man looks. I know he is. I know he's competing with me in the Iron Man. Shout out to you, man. Thanks for checking it out. And we got Phoenix here as well. Naimov getting better than that. I do think he has gotten a bit better. That line, though, man, let's get a complete check on the line, so I'm not speaking out of turn here. But currently, as we speak, that line, holy, is -550. So it's coming down a bit, but still insanely high number for someone who has lost to Colin Anglin, a guy who was losing that fight until he knocked out Malarkey, a guy who I just think has his flaws. And I think a better control grappler or a better volume fighter can beat Naimov if they're able to survive that power. But in this case here, Silva's a guy who has his hands very low, who is hittable, has poor striking defense, and Naimov's going to walk forward. And I do think he has 50 minutes to land, 12 and a half minutes to land that seminal blow. I think Silva's a guy with finishing upside in his own right. So we're covering both bases here. All right, with those two out of the way, let's get some plus money here. And in a line that I do like here, Edgar Chairez by knockout, plus 200. And, shout out to our boys here at CoolBet. They're helping us out because I see plus 130, plus 150 other spots here. We still get a pretty good number on this one right here. And let me walk you through it. We have ourselves Edgar Chairez minus 500 on some books here. This is the fourth time this fight's been booked. It is a very weird one at that, but one where I think we're kind of getting away from what we set out to start with, right? The first time they fought, Edgar by KO was like plus 120, and the submission line was plus 300. Now we had a small sample size, and we go out there, and yes, Chairez looked to get up that submission, but I still think his major path to victory is rooted in that KO. And now that he's a larger favorite here in a fight that is at elevation in his home country, it's a fight that I do think Chairez wins. And in doing so, I do think the preferred method for him is that knockout. I think he's able to walk forward. We know that De Silva is first 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or bust. And typically, he's a guy who has been knocked out in the past. Of course, I acknowledge that submission is live for Chairez. Of course, I acknowledge that it's something that we have to look out for. But when we're getting plus 200, the implied probability is a KO, especially at a guy who is minus 500 the money line, is a lot better than I think the line entails here. So I'm taking that shot there. I got a unit on Edgar Chairez by KO. I do like him get it done by that way. You got to be a bit cautious of the submission, but I do think he wins this fight. I do think the being at elevation only helps him here, and I do think the method he gets it done by is KO. Let's get back to some more violence here, and this is an interesting fight. This is the last fight we're going to talk about in the best bet segment. Still happy to talk about any other fights, but betting-wise, in this little PowerPoint presentation I did, is this one. This one we're getting a bit weird. We do have ourselves Raul Rosas Jr., Ricky Turcios. Turcios has been a primary decision guy, and Rosas Jr. went to decision 2 fights ago, which is why I kind of get this line of where it is, but do not get it twisted. Raul Rosas Jr. is a primary finisher. He's a guy who has been typically early finish or bust. He has been able to win some decisions, but a guy who is extremely dynamic in that very first round, has had the ability to go out there and dispose of anybody. The guy is a phenom at a young age, the youngest fighter to be signed to the UFC. There's no denying that. And he gets a guy in Ricky Turcios who can be taken down, who can be put in a precarious situation, who's taken down 7 times by Kevin Natividad, 6 times by Brady Heastan, a guy who is just able to be taken down. And that's going to allow Raul Rosas Jr. to attempt to get the back, attempt to get a submission. And I do think he has the possibility to get a first-round finish. But the questions with Raul Rosas Jr. has been, can he sustain that? He faded in his loss to Rodriguez that one time. He faded going for so many early takedowns, and that's really his style. Now we add in so much more elevation, 7,500 feet in the air, and a guy in Turcios who will push a hellacious pace. In that fight against Brady Heastan, he was taken down 6 times, controlled for 8 minutes, and still landed over 200 significant strikes. He pushed a very, very heavy pace. So although I do see a world where it goes to decision, I do think it ends more than a minus 128 price tag entails, and it is still a fight that I see ending inside the distance. It is one where I think Rosas has early success, or Turcios is able to go out there late. Either way, I am playing the under here. The fight doesn't go. Here's where things get a bit dicey, all right? And you can call me out. We're playing numbers here. We're having a fun time. Ricky Turcios, round 3 KO. Ricky Turcios, round 3 in general is plus 2,500. Again, I'm picking Rosas. I think he wins, but if the cardio can't hold up, Turcios, we know, can go a full 15 minutes. The guy fights like he's on crack. He will have the ability to go out there and get a late one. Plus 2,500, that's a sprinkle. But if you want to hear real madness or insanity, I've never bet one of these in my life before. What about that? A little bit of a draw action. It's probably not something the smartest thing to do. I think I'm going to have like a 1/10 of a unit on there. But I do think this is going to be a very, very very fast-paced fight. And I do think that if I'm going to go out there and be taking Ricky Turcios, fight doesn't go the distance, that a draw is also in play. It could either be a 10-8 for Rosas early on with his incredible ground control, and then Turcios taking over late, or Rosas being able to win the first, second round, and then cardio dump in a 10-8 round for Turcios. I'm just having fun. This is not really the best bet in the world, but it's one where you get huge plus money for a fun one. I much prefer the fight doesn't go the distance, but thought we'd throw in some fun narrative plays, a good time in the background. But those are the best bets we got going on here. Thanks again for CoolBet to help me put together the video, and that part is settled. Be sure to check out code Gordo in the comment section down below. And yeah, that is the UFC best bet. I got more bets than that. They will be posted in a couple hours, but those are ones that I'm still liking at these price tags and ones that I think are a solid play here. Phoenix asking if that fight's still on. Yes, Chirez missed weight by 5 pounds, 4 pounds. A bad miss. And then Lacerda missed it by a singular pound as well. So both guys missed weight, double whammy in that regard. But the fight is still on there. Fine, both parts of their purse. We have seen the fight canceled on fight day before, so keep an eye on it. But yes, as of right now, that fight is still on, and I am liking that plus 200. Let's dive into some PFL action. It's just interesting to say the least. We have that card starting at noon Eastern tomorrow. Saudi Arabia card. Oh, there's our odds for Mexico City, and let's get our odds for some PFL action. All right. Now, I will admit there are some fights I did not cap at all, and there's some fights I had very minimal research in. I did focus on the big ones. I went out and did my research accordingly, and I do think it's a pretty fun card, one that I think is going to live up to give us a pretty decent fight day, and one that I think has an opportunity for us to maybe make some money on it as well. It is a card that is supposed to showcase the merger of PFL and Bellator, and for that reason, I think it's supposed to be a showcase card, but one that I think isn't getting the amount of love that I thought it would. In this case here, we are in Saudi Arabia, and that is kind of where these first couple fights are going to be with Saudi Arabian prospects. The first fight actually isn't even on this page here because it's an amateur bout, so you can't even see it. But the first fight of the night will be an amateur bout. I didn't tape it. I saw a Saudi Arabian prospect with a very extensive amateur record versus a opponent who looks like just to be a setup fight. That first fight of the night came a bet on it, but there you go there. Second fight of the night is also that's very similar boat. You have a very strong Saudi Arabian prospect, someone who looks to have skills in all areas, a guy who I think can grapple, who I think can strike, and who I think they're trying to promote here in front of their home crowd. I didn't see too much on the Rouse side. I didn't really dig too much into it, but I think that fight is a setup fight as well. We're not getting any line value. I mean, minus 1,800. I don't even know why I'm talking about it at this point in time. It should be a fight where they're able to go out and roll. All right, let's get into them here. Clarissa Shields making a return, minus 450. Kelsey DeSantos, plus 350. Again, low-level fight, one where you don't know how much you want to dive into it. It's a Clarissa Shields fight. We've seen her out grapple before. She's a phenomenal boxer, but, I mean, that ground game is always a concern. And the question is, does Kelsey DeSantis have the ability to go out there and execute on a ground game plan? And I think that probably not. This seems to be a fight to get Shields back in order. She does have the much better boxing in this case here. She is someone who I think wins the fight at a high clip just because I do think she's able to keep it on the feet and outstrike DeSantis. But DeSantis looks tough. The first thing I went and looked for is could we get a decent over 1.5 rounds, because I do think the finish for Shields comes later. Can't see that offer very much. So a fight that I do think Shields wins, one where I would like to see more success from DeSantis, but I think it's a later finish. So if your book does offer it over 1.5, that could be an interesting one. Not touching this one, but Bijoalio Walsh, a guy I think wins. They're setting up first pro fight. Palacio, shorter fighter. We know who they're setting up to have success here. Similar thing with the Pico one. I know Corrales is tough, but Pico's I think is the real deal, and both these fights are set up towards success. I do think that these first 5 fights of the night, we have a clear A side, clear B side, one where they're the PFL trying to get their guys to get wins here, and I think Pico reflects that as well. All right, AJ McKee, Clay Collard, one of my favorite fights on the card here. This could have fight in the night written all over it just because the styles they both bring. AJ McKee, atop of the world at one point, a great Bellator fighter, good at resume as well. But Clay Collard has been that thorn in people's side, extremely tough, forward pressure, incredible boxer, and incredible durability. I mean, remember the day when he went out there and he fought Max Holloway in the UFC a bit ago, had a pro boxing career since then as well. The guy has been able to go out there and put on some very fan-friendly bouts, and I think this one's no different. And I was looking for many reasons to go out here and want to play Clay Collard. I mean, every time that Clay Collard's on a fight, he's going to go forward, he's going to be durable, and he's going to look to knock your head off for every second it's on the feet. He's got great volume, great pace, great cardio. And I do think that forever this fight is standing, that he could go forward and he could win these exchanges. He could be a close contender here, but I do think that the ground advantage goes to McKee. I think McKee is smart enough to be able to take it down to the ground. We have seen deficiencies from Collard on the mat, and I do think that allows for McKee to have some success. One that's a very close fight. If the line keeps climbing and we can get a decent number on like Clay Collard by decision, or him to go out there and win a close striking affair, I would look into it. But a fight that's juiced to go over, one where there's a guy with a clear grappling advantage. I do think the discrepancy in the grappling starts are than the discrepancy in the striking, allowing for Collar to have some success. Okay. Next up, we have Thiago Santos, Yoel Romero, a UFC bout, a fun one at that. I'm not going to spend too much time into this one. These guys are at the end of their career. They're both big power guys. Who has more left in them? Who knows? At first I'd go with Yoel Romero. It seems like he never ages. He's barking at the camera, but Santos popped for some things. Who knows? I'm going to side with Yoel Romero here. I think he's a guy who's going to continue to walk forward. I think he's going to be the aggressor in this fight. And although Santos has had that technicality, Yoel Romero just seems like a cyborg. I mean, the guy does not get damaged too easily. He's been super durable, super tough, good cardio. Whereas Santos, we've seen him have the knee injuries. We've seen him succumb to damage before. I think it's one where, although they're both their tail end of career and anything can happen, I'm going to side with Romero side here. Nemkov Kapolosa, one where I do think Nemkov has a clear edge on the mat. Jackson Cooper, one where Jackson I think has a clear advantage in the a lot of aspects here, especially considering that Ray Cooper, we don't know where he's at this point of his career, missing weight in his last one for up a weight class and being able to be taken down. I do think Jason Jackson has an advantage there. There's not too much of an edge here. Let's get up here. The main ones we want to talk about are the ones in the main and co-main, and the ones that are going to attract the most viewership around that main card. And I think it's one where Johnny Evelyn is a guy who I think also wins, but there's some interest here. Kimba Casagne, we all know his story. He went from being knocked out by Joaquin Buckley on prelims UFC to winning $1 million. Like, the guy is a phenomenal story. I feel good for the guy. I like to cheer for him. He did that up a weight class too. Now back at a normal weight class, I think he's able to have some, hopefully repeat some success here in PFL. But he's getting a huge, tall task ahead. One where I do think Eblin is the much more well-rounded fighter. A guy who, if they fought in the UFC a few years ago, Eblin would be minus 2,000 over. Right? Casagne wouldn't even get the chance to fight Eblin. Right? So I still think there's advantages, and I know Casagne is making those improvements, but he's had the opportunity to go out there and get his first KO wins and beat tired opponents. He's now going to have a guy in front of him who's a notorious strength in the Bellator, who's fought the best level of competition, who is, I think, a very talented fighter. Is one where I do think Eblin is able to go out there and have some success. Where it does seem like where was it? I do think it's one where oh well. Anyways, it's one where I do think Evelyn's able to win this fight. Another one I'm picking a favorite, unfortunately. All right, but the one we all been thinking about, the one that is the main event, and the main event for a reason, is going to be that Renan Ferreira Ryan Bader fight. Both fighters have their flaws, and I think that going into it, I was completely ready to take Bader, considering he has a grappling path to victory, and I still think he has a grappling path to victory here over someone Ferreira. But watching the face-offs, watching a bit of tape on it, I'm going to side with Renan Ferreira here, which I did not expect to do. I like Ryan Bader. I really do. And I do think he's a smart, cerebral fighter. But 6'8" Renan Ferreira he was towering over Ryan Bader. Ryan Bader, 40 years of age now. And Ferreira, I do think, is a guy with more power, more height behind him at this point, and a guy who I do think is being more explosive. Although Bader's going to have an advantage once he gets to the mat, Ferreira has shown decent hips. He has shown the ability to work from bottom position. He's also shown the ability that every second's on the feet, he has one-shot power. We have seen Bader chin check before. I do think that although the path is there for Bader, although I could see a world where Bader wins, I think the 6'8" larger fighter with better strike should have a larger price tag. And if anything, I might get towards a bet on Ferreira. What I'm trying to put across with this one, though, is if you are backing Ryan Bader this week, I think his win is also correlated to his over 1.5. I kind of like this if I'm picking Bader, just because I don't think he gets an early finish. Ferreira has had the ability to stay safe from bottom position. He has the ability to work. And I do think that if Bader is able to survive that first round with that wrestling, that every round starts on the feet, right? It's going to be one where he's going to have to go ahead and repeat that. I think that if Ryan Bader wins, it's going to be an extended fight, and it's going to be one that includes that wrestling. If Ferreira wins and you're on that Ferreira side of things, it's correlated with that under. I do think it's going to be Ferreira KO is maybe the better way to go that way, just because I do think that it's going to be an early stoppage for Ferreira. He seems pretty front-loaded, a lot of those type 2 muscle fibers, very explosive guy. And although I was considering taking a Bader by decision, or a Bader and over 1.5, I'm siding with Ferreira under. I do think those are correlated, but a fun card at that. All this to say is I do think this is a primary showcase card, one where there aren't too many betting spots sticking out. I do think I'm going to maybe play something on Ferreira. I do like myself some Evelyn. Maybe I'll probably that with Moreno if I want some DGen action on it, because I do think Moreno's a decent parlay piece as well. And Yoel Romero at the close odds as well. I'm going to keep looking to see if any more props open up, but still a pretty fun card at that. So there we go. We covered those two. Aside from that, 20 minutes in talking about a couple fights. If you guys have any comments, leave them there as well, or leave them in the comment section after the fact. I'm happy to talk any fights here, but just going over the throwing it back to that Mexico City card one more time. Just want to talk about some DraftKings leverage. On this card here, I think it's a phenomenal play at slate as a whole. I think it's one where you can have the ability to go out there and target multiple layers of it, whether it be cash or GPP. Tournament-wise, though, I want to give you guys a couple pivots I like. I know there's going to be plenty of chalk lineups revolving around Ortega, Moreno, and Torres. I love Torres, love Moreno, like Rodriguez as well, but maybe like Ortega. But when it comes to DraftKings, there's a few names that stick out to me. My 3 favorite leverage spots. Number 1, a guy I've talked about a ton is Barcelos. He may not be the most leverage, but he's a guy I just want to mention one more time. Huge grappling path to victory. I do think he wins this fight. The fight's projected inside the distance. I do think he has grappling success and grappling path to victory. He's one of my favorite plays in the mid-range that could go overlooked due to the Morenos and Rodriguez's and Torreses of the pack. Now, here's where I get a little bit of hate for it as well. Leverage-wise, again, not in your single-entry GPP lineups, but leverage-wise, if you have a large portfolio, the more I think about it, Yasmin Uregi, 9.5K. She's going to be extremely under-owned, and I completely understand why, but Sam Hughes is a girl who absorbs a ton of damage. Sam Hughes is a girl who can be taken down a lot of the time, and you know what? You throw... We talked a lot about Hughes' resiliency, but Emery was putting in some horrible spots. I would not be surprised if Uregi's able to land a couple takedowns, land a submission, and even maybe I should check what that submission line even is, if that's even a good play to add there as well. I do think that there is paths to victory for someone like Uregi to go out there and score pretty well on DraftKings. I think she is a decent leverage play. Of course, I'm not getting to her minus 600 price tag, but what's her sub line? Yeah. Wow, plus 950. You know what? Maybe I'll have a little fun and sprinkle that in a couple Hail Marys as well. But one where I do think that there is a interesting leverage spot on DraftKings. I do think she goes under owned. I do think she's someone who has paths to victory on the mat. Someone who could utilize grappling volume to score well. With that low ownership, she is a leverage play. Last but not least, 7.2K, Ricky Tercios. We talked about him already with him having round 3 upside, with him having decision upside. It is a fight that I still think has fun metrics and a good time written all over it. I am picking Rosas Jr., but if Tercio wins, he's shown the ability to be controlled for 8 minutes and still put up 120 points. At 7.2K, you should go lower owned. He has incredible pace, incredible volume. And you know what? If he wins, he should score very well. So there's 3 plays for you. I thought I'd throw in there. With that, we've covered best bets sponsored by CoolBet. Nice. Right there. Some PFL action as well as some DraftKings plays. So that's all I have on my schedule. If you see nothing there in the comments, then I think it's time we get out of here and enjoy our Friday nights. So if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, I'll be hanging out not only in the comment section down below, but on Twitter. Feel free to at me. They heard me talking about Uregi, so the cops are on their way. But no, one where you can find me on Twitter at gamblesgordo. Feel free to at me or even hit up my DMs. We'll have any talks about this good fight card ahead, as well as hit in the comment section down below. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Hit the like button down below. Subscribe to the channel. Show some love. Let's make some money, guys. It should be a fun one. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Best of luck in all your DraftKings and betting endeavors.